This week is Parashas Chukas, a very small parsha with a very large impact, because this is the parsha that the Lashon explains that until this week's parsha, it was possible for Moshe Rabbeinu to bring the Gula by himself. He was born with the Or HaGanuz, a special connection, special kesher to the hidden light of creation, which was on the first day of creation. Ma'aseh Bereshis, Baruch Hu made the light, and as Rashi points out, he subsequently hid the light on the first day to keep it out of the hands of the Rishoyim. As we've spoken about in the past, this is not the light of the sun, the moon, or the stars, or incandescent light bulbs, or fluorescent light bulbs. This is the light of what's called Das Elyon, the upper Das, the upper knowledge, the upper divine light, that its source is so sublime that no one really can access it at that point in time, but it comes down filtered somewhat, and it's the basis of Torah, it's the basis of the Jewish neshama, it's the basis of all the miracles that have happened through history on behalf of the Jewish people, specifically to do with Geula, redemption. It's the basis of all of life, actually, but it's mostly hidden. So people think, for the most part, that life is simply random, when in fact life is quite miraculous. This is what Clint Mendoza tells his daughter, who accidentally lit the vinegar as opposed to the oil, and she was worried that maybe she'd made a mistake, that it was costing her eventually Loma Ba, because a miracle was being done for her unnecessarily that she may not have merited. And he says back to his daughter, it all depends upon you, how you look at the situation. And for you, like me, that miracle is nature and nature is miracle, meaning that there's no such thing as teva per se, that nature is in fact consistent miracle. It's the Or HaGanuz, even though it might be hidden away from us, then it's what you're doing is quite natural as far as the Kodesh Baruch Hu is concerned. But if you believe in teva per se, and you think there's this thing called nature, and that miracle happens to sometimes enter into the reality and save you or save Klal Yisrael, then you're being soymach on a miracle. As the Gemara says, you can't be soymach on a miracle because either the miracle won't happen and you'll be in trouble, or it will have to come off your cheshbon at the end of days, because you don't get miracles for free, unless, of course, you're real with miracles. So then you can do miracles at will, like Clint Mendoza and his generation, Rabbi Kiva. So this Or HaGanuz came through Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the funnel, he was the channel, he was the conduit through which this light flowed into the world. As the Gemara Chagiga says, and Sota says, that Moshe was attached to this light from birth. The Leshem explains Kabbalistically because of where his soul came from, and therefore as a result of that, he himself single-handedly could bring the redemption at the proper time. Once the Gezerah was made, once Hashem made the Gezerah against Moshe Rabbeinu and said, you will not go into the land and bring the redemption, he could not do it in that lifetime. From that point onward, explains the Zohar, that the redemption can only come on behalf of the entire Jewish nation, or at least a significant portion of Klal Yisrael, but no single individual, short of Mashiach himself, is going to bring the Gula. That's what this week's parsha means. So it's a major significance of what happens in this week's parsha by Moshe actually hitting the rock, which is also why the death of Miriam is also juxtaposed as well in this week's parsha, because as we know from the Medrash, she was the one who predicted that Moshe would be, she had Nevuah, that Moshe's birth would in fact be the source of the Yeshua. She saw Moshe as the Moshiach, the one who would save Klal Yisrael from Egyptian slavery, and she believed in it the entire time, even when her father, Amram, the God of the door, did not, because he saw the decrees get worse. He saw the slavery increase in intensity. She still believed. She still watched. She still held out, a candle for Moshe Rabbeinu that should become a Mashiach one day, and as a result of that, she's juxtaposed in this week's parsha to tell us that just like Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who could bring the redemption by himself, he was in fact the Moshiach, not just of the Jews from Mitzrayim, but for all of history, and his neshama will come back eventually in the body of Mashiach, that she saw that, and she's attached to that. So therefore, she's juxtaposed with the episode of the rocket. So the question is, what was the point? What went wrong? I mean, we know what went wrong because Moshe was told to speak to the rock. And why speak to the rock? And as the Medrash points out, he in fact did speak to the rock. First, Moshe was somebody who did everything Kodesh Baruch Hu did right to the last letter, right to the last T. So if Kodesh Baruch Hu said, speak to the rock, he certainly spoke to the rock first. And the Medrash says he spoke to the rock, and the rock first brought forth blood. So therefore, he hit the rock, and a little bit of water came out. He hit the rock again, and a lot of water came out in the end. And everybody was impressed, but Kodesh Baruch Hu, because he said, you have to speak to the rock and bring forth water. As Rashi points out, the people would have done a kol v'chomer. They would have said, if a rock, which can't speak, but does the will of Hashem, right? A rock that's inanimate, has no life to it, but does the will of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, kol v'chomer, that we who have intelligence and speak and free will, we should do the will of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. But the truth is kind of faulty kol v'chomer. Doesn't actually make sense. Why does the rock do the will of a Kodesh Baruch Hu? Because it's inanimate. Clearly, right? And the entire Jewish history, from start to finish. And there's two sides to this miraculous reality of Klal Yisrael. We're witnessing right now the negative side. The positive side is all the Yeshuas that we see, all the miracles, all the times that Kodesh Baruch Hu actually redeems Klal Yisrael against all the odds, right? But we're watching anti-Semitism against all the odds, against all logic right now. This is the black side, called black miracle, a negative side. But no matter how you look at it, the Jewish people are lamala min hateva. They are supernatural. And to live in Eretz Yisrael means to live supernaturally, on a supernatural level, because the land itself is supernatural. Just take a look at a map. I mean, it's amazing. The world is on the Jewish people's case, Israel's case. They look at the map. Just take it a map. Just go to the UN and pull out a map and say, look, tiny little Eretz Yisrael, this tiny little country which you now carved out, the West Bank, even made even smaller over here, takes 4 minutes to fly from one side to the other side, tanks just drive right across it. Incredible danger, surrounded by hostiles on all sides. And they're still coming down on us because we attack a flotilla, because we defend ourselves by investigating that there might be things on the boat that are dangerous for the Jewish people, and we're criticized over here. We have to apologize to Turkey, and we have to make amends. But don't on the ship, or dock it in Ashdod, and we'll check it for you for free. We won't even charge you, and send it on its merry way once it checks out. You didn't want to dock over here, and Egypt did the same thing as well. Egypt said, we don't want you going to Gaza Strait because the Palestinians are also problems. Hamas is also a concern of ours. So come over here to an Egyptian port then, and we'll check it, and then we'll also pass it on to Gaza if everything works out, checks out perfectly fine. These people were totally and completely antagonistic, and the world jumps on their case, on their boat with them, to support them against the Jewish people. And how quickly they can disappear. So Kodesh Baruch Hu, one by one, takes them away, until eventually we realized the whole thing was completely l'mama teva. What we thought was teva, we thought was nature supporting us, all the success in Galus, all the success amongst the Americans and in England, it wasn't the result of our own hard work, as anti-Semitism will show you. Because the same thing was true in Europe too, in Germany as well, in Spain. If they don't like us, they'll always find a reason to hate us. They'll always find a reason to express the hatred in some way, no matter how much we contribute, no matter how smart we are, because the Jewish people are God's people. Lamala. And if you don't get the message, you can't survive in this world as a Jew. And I don't simply mean assimilation, because eventually it catches up to us, and the Jewish people get overrun. And the only reason why we still survive the Holocaust is because of Bris Avos, and because we're Lamona Teva. I mean, even in the Holocaust itself, nobody could work that hard and sleep so little and eat what they ate and still survive for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Nobody. Everybody else would have died after months. And we survived anyhow. We built ourselves miraculously. So God says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to speak to the rock. You can't hit the rock. If you hit the rock, it gives the impression that you have to be physically involved in the world to make things happen, to get me to give to you. Unless you physically do something, it's not going to happen. That's not the way it works in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, you're missing something, you turn to Kodesh Baruch Hu. As the Ramban points out in Parashas Bahar, the only need for a doctor in the good old days, before we lost the Beis Hamikdash, was to learn how to eat properly, to take care of your body, as the mitzvah Torah says. You have to take care of yourself.